Hello, and welcome to another fully live Friday episode of Hacking with Friends. Sorry we're starting a little bit late. We had to wait for James Randolph to get here, but we're all here now, so we have my friend and fellow hacker, Nick here, who's going to be going through the hacking news of the week.
Hello again.
Yeah, so thank you for coming on. I know that our viewers might know you as a contributor to both Nullbyte and also to the Hack5 channel. So it's great to have another hacker who we've had make some content for the community come on and say hello.
Yeah, I've been busy with other things for the past year, but it's always nice to get back on camera.
Cool, so we have lots of different stuff to talk about. If you are just joining us today, then especially if you've seen our recent Q&As on the Hack5 channel, it's great to see you. Make sure you subscribe to the Security Forward channel because we do these every week, and we're going to go through a lot of pretty crazy stories today. So let's go ahead and get started. Over on my screen, I have a little hint about some content we're hoping to film with the National Security Agency. So the NSA goes to the RSA Security Conference just about every year. And it was, how many, like 4 or 5 years ago?
No, it was only in 2019.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was like 3 years ago.
That feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
So back in 2019, Nick, myself, and our production manager, who we refer to as the Dark Elf, all went to the RSA conference and got to talk to a lot of really cool people, including the NSA. And Nick's first assignment, or one of his first assignments at this conference, was to go and talk to the NSA. How did that go?
Yeah, that was like my first, I mean, I was already doing production stuff like in a studio for about a year at that point, but that was like my first man on the street. All right, interview this random person. And yeah, we were asking these nerds who made Ghidra, which was a reverse engineering hacking tool. It's actually worked really well. The NSA guys were friendly but cagey. And yeah, they were very cautious about what information they were telling to us. But, you know, nice guys.
Yeah, so we had a similar, well, Nick didn't go to RSA this year, and he also didn't get sick, so congratulations. Yep. But I did go to the RSA conference, and I got to talk to the NSA people, and they really liked my idea about doing an episode on going into the public sector. So we did an episode on Hack5 forever ago where we talked about what it's like to switch into careers in the private sector. And that went really well. But we wanted to go ahead and maybe reach out to them and have some sort of back and forth about making an episode about going into something like the NSA and what that's like and what people like about it. So this was my the message I sent to them. It started with, hello, you probably already knew this, and then proceeded to lay out the idea for the episode. But I'm not sure if they're going to think that's funny. If the NSA doesn't think that's funny, then I kind of don't want to work with them, you know? Yeah, but anyway, so if you follow our channel on Hack5, you can probably hope to see this episode come out in the next couple months. If they get back to us, which they have not yet. Again, maybe they didn't think that was funny. But I would love to do an episode on just talking about what it's like to get into the public sector, because we have never covered that before. So if that's a topic you're interested in, let us know. If it's not a topic you're interested in, also let us know. We can always do something else. But
we can just ask the NSA if they'll be interested.
Yeah. Say NSA, just hit me up on my private email account if you're interested, and we'll get this going.
Yeah.
Hopefully they've got a sense of humor. Another thing, I, so far this week, have gone to a doctor's appointment and a dentist appointment in which the receptionist has read this article and recognized that it was me because they saw my name in the appointment, roster for the next day. So this was an interview that I did while I was at the RSA conference. And what's kind of funny is the reporter here asked me, all these things, and I responded with a pretty complete list of all the stuff you can do. But some other dude also said the same thing, and he's a CEO. So the first part of the article was basically the stuff I said, but something that somebody else saying basically the same thing. But the second part, nobody else, I guess, knew enough nuanced Wi-Fi stuff enough to talk about. So I got to give a shout out to Wiggle Wi-Fi.
Yep.
You know what Wiggle Wi-Fi is?
Oh yeah, Wiggle Wi-Fi is the best. It's the best. It was Pokemon Go before Pokemon Go.
Exactly. So this is a way that you can use an Android phone and use its Wi-Fi and Bluetooth sensors to walk around and find devices around you that are generating their own access point or Bluetooth network. So what that means is, provided something's creating an access point, so that means you can't find clients, for example. Like, if there was a camera that was connected to an access point, you wouldn't be able to necessarily see it. But if there was a camera that was generating its own access point and someone was connecting to it and watching it, you would be able to detect it, or if it had like a Bluetooth connection or something like that. So there's a lot of different tools that you have to look for, Wi-Fi connected devices, and really that's what this is. So I talked a lot about like the reflections you can get off the lenses, because our test actually showed that was surprisingly effective at showing the difference between like a glass lens and something that maybe at surface level looks like a lens but was like a painted surface instead. So this was a really fun article, and it seems like it's getting actually a lot of traction. So initially I like sent this to my mom. She's like, that's nice. Good thing I don't go out anymore. And then like 3 days later, she emailed me like, I'm very proud of you. And I think that's because like other random people were like, wait, was that so-and-so? So yeah, this article, big shout out actually to Varonis for helping out with this. They would, if it wasn't for Rachel, the PR lady at Varonis, like helping set up this interview and making it super easy for me, I never would have gotten in this. But it's so cool to get to see some of the Wi-Fi research and stuff I know be out there, and that normal people are learning about the various ways you can detect these hidden cameras, because now people are a little worried about them because
they're so cheap. These little tiny cameras are so inexpensive and so easy to set up.
$5 for a Wi-Fi enabled hidden camera that can be stuck inside of all sorts of stuff that also can do facial recognition. Like that's crazy
scary
to me. And it's pretty startling to a lot of these people who didn't know that was something you could do. So this was a super cool article. If your parents or grandparents are reading it, then tell them I'm glad I can help. All right, so then we've also got the Raspberry Pi Pico W. This is so confusing to normal people. So we need to take a step back and be like, is this just an update to the Raspberry Pi W?
That's what I thought when
like
I first
Pi
read
Zero
it.
W?
Yeah, that's what I was like, oh, and they're back, and it's very inexpensive, and it's like almost as much as an ESP8266, so I was very excited when I saw it.
Yeah, so like the big question here is like, if I was a beginner and I was looking at this and I saw, oh, it's a Pico W, is that the same or similar to a Raspberry Pi Zero W? Because it looks like almost the same form factor, right? No. Wrong. Yeah, so like this is actually a microcontroller. So this is something that's more like an ESP8266 or an Arduino. It's something that's programmable at a low level, and it does not come with an operating system. It does not come with an SD card to put an SD card reader to put an SD card in and load an operating system. It is just a microcontroller. So this is much more similar to, again, like a ESP32 or something like that. What's silly here is a lot of people are super excited about this, but our friend MG has been on Twitter talking about why he doesn't like it. And the reason he was saying he doesn't like it is because it's not actually just one microcontroller that's a Wi-Fi enabled microcontroller like an ESP32 or an ESP8266 or any of the new ones that have come out. It is actually two different microcontrollers stuck on a development board. And what's a little odd that he was saying is that the Wi-Fi like coprocessor here is actually more powerful than the main like chip, which is strange. So he was saying that this is a little bit of an odd design choice, and it's in no way like a ESP killer or something like that, because it's literally, again, just two microcontrollers stuck on a board, one interfacing with the other, which is not the same as microcontrollers like the ESP32, which is an integrated one that has Wi-Fi, and you can get it in a module for about $4. So in my opinion, like the ESP32 S2 in the form factor we've been using for like making our Wi-Fi or our USB nuggets is a better deal. It's $4, it's integrated, it's powerful, and it has great compatibility and lots of pins broken out. But for beginners that are in the Raspberry Pi ecosystem and want to go from the Pico to something that involves Wi-Fi as well, I think it's a nice evolution. I just don't think it's like the people can't compare it directly to an ESP32 or an ESP32 S2 like we use, because it's not integrated. It's not one module. It's not one like microcontroller you're working with.
I'm still glad it exists for beginners, because then you can just go to the Raspberry Pi store and like buy something from a name you trust, like rather than having to dig into the depths of like AliExpress and order in bulk. So this still serves a niche. And it's got the backing of like the Raspberry Pi Foundation behind it. So
that's what I think is cool.
Yeah,
definitely. Because like the hardware people are going to complain because it's not like an integrated module. It's not like it's not really competing with an ESP32. Not really. But but it has educational backing, and really the Raspberry Pi Foundation, its community is what is important here. Because a lot of these different things, like they're only as good as the resources that are available. So that's why we love working with like the ESP32S2, because Adafruit supports it. And there's lots of documentation, and it's easy to use, and it's super flexible. So like it's really when one of these architectures or like setup is supported by lots of educational material that it gets good. My main complaint about this is that it is confusing to beginners who think that this is a Raspberry Pi Zero W or like a slight downgrade from it that's maybe a little slower. They're going to be confused when it doesn't boot up, and there's there's no HDMI here. Like where do you plug it in?
And like in my head, I just associate Raspberry Pi with like single board computers. Like I don't think of microcontroller when I see Raspberry Pi.
Exactly.
So it even caught me off guard.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of like a brand confusion issue, which I found kind of interesting, because then again, also the microcontroller people are pushing back and saying, no, this doesn't really compete with some of the other boards that are out there, because it's two actual microcontrollers, not just one. So super interesting news. There's been a lot of debate about this over the last couple of days. As for how I feel, I've bought 4 of them.
So, at least you can actually buy them too. That's a plus.
Well, I mean, they're on back order, but yeah, you can pay somebody money for the promise of getting them someday. It looks like I'll probably get mine like towards the end of July or middle of July, something
better
like
than
that.
a Pi 4.
Yeah, that's certainly true. All right, so going through a couple other things, the Supreme Court ruling on abortion has been bringing up a lot of the conversation on privacy. So there's lots of different ways where people are concerned about how different apps might or different sources of data might come back to bite them if they are somebody in a state that now restricts abortion. And there's some really interesting guides coming out that go through the ways that tracking can happen. So if this is something that you're concerned about, or if this is something that you want to share with other people, this is one of the best guides I found to understanding the various ways that your data can be collected and that it can be tied to this issue. So I'm not going to go too far into it because it's an infographic. It kind of speaks for itself, and there's a lot more resources here if you want to check it out. But I found the debate around privacy here to be really interesting because the tools for surveillance have evolved so much beyond what they originally were when this was previously an issue, that it's a totally different legal landscape, it's a totally different surveillance landscape, and everybody should be aware of the resources they have to limit their exposure to being surveilled and do the best they can to preserve their digital privacy.
So what would you say? Use cash?
There's a lot of suggestions here. It seems like there are so many layers here that you need to be aware of in order to really be sure that you are being private, that you're not being tracked. It's really challenging for the average person. So it's really about like what your threat model is and what exactly you feel like is the right level of privacy for you. But just looking at this and being astounded by how many different sources of data there are now tracking you at all times. It really is pretty difficult for the average person to go about their business without being tracked. So when it comes to this specific issue that now has legal ramifications for a lot of people involved, that level of tracking is something we've never really seen before for something that affects so many people. All right, and then finally, Nick, have you seen the tweets from Radio Shack?
I have, only just this morning.
Okay, so Radio Shack has recently been tweeting a lot of I would describe it politely as out-of-pocket stuff that reminds me of the late John McAfee. And it's a lot of crypto stuff, and if you were curious as to why this is happening, it appears as though it has been purchased by a cryptocurrency company that is trying to use their brand name, reputation, and social media accounts in order to stir up as much controversy and attention as possible to focus on various cryptocurrency endeavors, we'll call them. My advice, just ignore them. They're having a tantrum. They'll calm down soon. All right, Nick, let's go over to you. What have you got for us this week?
So, so here's an article about Russians targeting not only Ukrainians on the ground and in the air, but also in cyber. So they're targeting like key infrastructure, so it's like energy, power plants, the military, everything. And so when the war started, I was surprised about how conventional it seemed, and I was expecting a lot more drones and a lot more like new tech to be showed off, but it was mostly still like boots on the ground and tanks.
And a lot of artillery.
And a lot of artillery. But like this is showing like there is still like a cyber component, which is basically a new theater of war, and it hasn't really been shown off in a war of this scale between two like large nation states. One quote from this article I really liked is that the rate of cyber attacks has remained the same, but the quality has greatly diminished. So basically, like in the first couple weeks, Russia threw all its like sick 0 days that it's been holding on to that they bought off the black market, and those have worked and they've been like fixed, and now they're just kind of throwing whatever they can figure out at the wall. But there is like some American corporations like Microsoft and Google are trying to like help secure Ukrainian infrastructure from these cyber attacks.
So one comment from what we were just talking about in the chat. James Randolph asked Andreas Spice. Do you know Andreas Spice?
No.
How? All right, so one of my favorite YouTube accounts is anytime I have a question about microcontrollers, it's like gravity. I'm pulled into some video by Andreas Spice talking about how this microcontroller works. And he is just a very well-known microcontroller expert that talks about the differences between microcontrollers, how to focus on like creating a project for a specific application. What are you looking up? Are you trying to spell his name?
Yeah, I spelled it wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch that.
The guy with the Swiss accent.
The guy with the Swiss accent. Yeah, there you go. Just type that in. But yeah, so he is apparently also confused about where the Raspberry Pi.
Yes,
with the
I
hat.
know this guy.
With the hat, and then he has the secret account where
he does the thing where he
takes
prints
the hat off,
and he prints like the microcontroller on like a piece of paper, like to zoom in on it. Is that the same guy?
Maybe.
Okay.
He does so much stuff.
Yeah.
But he's probably my favorite resource for microcontroller related trivia, or just figuring out like what some new microcontroller really is in terms of power, application, like all this cool stuff. So if he doesn't really know where this new Raspberry Pi fits within the whole ecosystem, then I probably don't either. But I would say also, if you're looking for more information about microcontrollers, or if you're curious about specific microcontroller projects, please follow this YouTube account. And if you're really into it, then follow the account where he takes the hat off. Because that's where he really, it's hidden in there.
Andreas Spice After Dark.
Yeah, he does like videos that could get his other account banned on that one. And once the hat comes off, the fun begins. All right, but thank you for your feedback. We really like it when you guys have some reactions to the news that we're putting out. So, all right, Nick, on to your next.
Speaking of YouTube accounts getting banned,
this is wild.
Yeah, so this is like a new underground like part of the arts and crafts community YouTube I had no idea about. So basically, people on YouTube are making instructional videos about how to take a microwave transformer to step up their like 120 volt power supply to create this like wood fractal art. And it looks very cool, but because you're like using exposed leads on a microwave transformer, it's incredibly dangerous. So these videos have led to what agencies in the US believe 34 people have died. 34 people in America have died looking at these instructional videos and following the instructions wrong, because microwave transformers are very dangerous. So the thing is, these instructional videos are still up, but one YouTuber posted a criticism of these videos and hers got taken down because the algorithm flagged her account as like talking about this dangerous technique.
So the whole conversation around it has been frozen, but in a flawed way that like is actually just preventing people from warning about it.
Yeah, so like YouTube, like, they had the right idea, like, hey, maybe, free information is great, but maybe some information should be a little harder to acquire.
Yeah.
But instead they're just deleting like the people who are trying to like ring the bell.
Yeah. So, wow. I've come out with some pretty bad videos, but I've never put out a video that's killed anyone as far as I'm aware. And we did a video on launching fireworks. So that was really, the whole like point of that was like launch fireworks from far away.
Yes.
So it's safer.
Yes.
Yeah, yikes. That sounds a little scary.
Yeah. Leave the microwave transformer projects to like Electro Boom or something.
Yeah, because he'll shock himself first and tell you how bad it was, which I sincerely appreciate from him. So also James says that it's not he's not the guy that does the drawings. That's Diodes Gone Wild.
Okay.
Is that I'm sorry, is that a real channel?
I got my microcontroller guys confused.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I didn't even know that Diodes Gone Wild was the channel, but it probably is because it's a great name.
Like YouTube nowadays, like I'll just get like videos like fed to me, and I don't really like see who uploads them.
Is it real?
Diodes Gone Wild. It looks like it.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. There's another alternative, and I guess he draws the circuits.
Yep.
All right. So over on my screen, we have an interesting piece of well, I guess just like malicious application fraud. So what this is supposed to try to do is force you to sign up in the background for premium services that normally you would need to authorize that then end up showing up on your bill. So, all right, this is what happens. It's called toll fraud, And if one of these applications is installed on your computer, then, or on your Android device rather, what it will do is attempt to abuse your WAP. And this is not the WAP that you might be thinking. A lot of people, when I say WAP, they assume that I'm talking about something completely wrong and completely different. And in this case, no, I am not talking about a wireless access point. That is totally different, you guys. Don't be silly. I'm talking about a wireless application protocol, obviously. This allows subscribers to like pay for content and add charges to their phone bill, but it requires an authorization from the carrier. And that means that this needs to do some pretty tricky stuff in the background in order to abuse that WAP. So once the WAP gets an SMS token and clicks on subscribe in the background, what it basically needs to do is grab this one-time password in order to authorize the transaction and then block any further SMS confirmations to come through. So the user doesn't realize that somebody's gone through and like messed with whatever's going on there. Now, in order to do that, they also have to be connected to the subscriber network. This doesn't work over Wi-Fi. So in order to work, the malicious software here has to disable the other WAP in order to connect and send to the, okay, so they're both WAPs. So it connects, it disconnects the Wi-Fi access point, also confusingly called a WAP. And then once it is 100% sure that the victim is on their carrier's network, it will begin to try to subscribe to these very, very pricey premium services in the background, grab the token, and then block the SMS confirmation that the user would normally see. So this is able to run on like pretty regular stuff that's available to applications in order to hook into functions of the phone and do certain things. So this is basically abusing built-in functions of the phone in order to do this very sneaky attack that, again, is just subscribing to these premium services that don't show up until you get your bill, and it's like $700 because it's signed up for all these random things.
I'm so sorry I don't have anything intelligent to say because I got so distracted by how frequently and punctuated you were saying WAP.
That's weird. But I understand the confusion. The acronym WAP has been hijacked by so many different people over the years. You know, people saying it's a web application, people saying that it's a wireless access point. I understand how confusing that can be. So if you were one of the people that thought I was talking about something else when I repeatedly and punctuatedly said WAP, that is not what I meant. I was really just talking about, you know, the wireless application protocol.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so yes. Anyway, on to the cryptocurrency news. We had a request for cryptocurrency news, and Nick is here to deliver.
Woo! Another crypto scam. So if we can just go over to my screen. Yes. So OpenSea, the largest marketplace for NFTs, okay, they didn't necessarily get hacked, but one of their an employee for one of their third-party vendors just went rogue and basically leaked the database of everyone who subscribed to an OpenSea newsletter. So this dude at customer.io, who is in charge for the email delivery for OpenSea, an employee just downloaded everything, and apparently I'm assuming he's going to sell it to people who just want to run phishing scams, because if you have the email who's everyone who's voluntarily volunteered for getting news from OpenSea, then they're likely to have an OpenSea account and likely to have some NFTs. So if you do have an OpenSea account and if you do have stuff you want to protect in there, be very cautious about any emails, because now everyone knows that you're into this stuff.
Yikes. Yeah, so that's just a list of potential victims that have signed up and then received a verification email. So that's everyone. That's their whole customer base is now open for scams. And there's just wow, so depending on how good the phishing emails are, if somebody really sophisticated gets involved, like North Korea or something, you could be seeing some pretty sophisticated phishing emails coming the way of anybody that signed up on OpenSea. How many people in our audience are registered on OpenSea? I guess let us know if you end up getting any very sophisticated phishing emails, because it seems like it's open season.
Yeah,
do you like that?
Yeah.
Do you like what I did there?
I saw that. Yeah. But the amount of money that can be stolen in a few clicks with crypto now, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like teenagers will be stealing millions of dollars of NFTs in 5 minutes. It's insane.
Yes, it is.
And you can't get it back because it's crypto.
Yeah, you'll have to call support, right?
Yeah, and then they're gonna be sorry. What if they can't freeze accounts.
They'll have to politely ask to fork their chain like Ethereum
Oh
did,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
The
everybody
great,
loves
what is
that.
that? The Great Ripple or whatever.
The Great Forkening.
The Great. Forkening. Oh my gosh.
All right, so over on my screen, we have a story about hack for hire groups. Do you know what those are, Nick?
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah, they're basically like mercenaries. But
exactly
with computers.
exactly
Instead of guns.
So yes, so these are mercenary groups often that like have some sort of training or like criminal background that are really good at crimes and will actually do crimes for you if you pay them. Now, of course, if you just go online and try to find these groups, normally you'll probably just end up getting people who steal your credit card information, because that's 90% of what happens when you try to do this sort of thing. However, there are real groups out there that operate via websites that have payment portals like this, where you can just pay to get access to all sorts of interesting stuff, and or have them be able to do things on whatever you say. So if you say you want to target this journalist's Instagram account, they will go after that with every exploit and every phishing scheme they have. And these groups have been known to go after a lot of targets that no other company would ever go after, because they're human rights defenders or journalists or somebody who's just going about their business and has been targeted by somebody who has a lot of money but no ethics. So what's interesting here also is that the different domains that were being put up for these attacks were kind of interesting. It's myproject-login.shop for the UAE hackers that they shut down. Google.health. Oh, Google. How did they get this one?
Whoa.
Is my question.
Gulg.
Oh, Gulg. Yeah, there you go. Mail.google.com. Like, there are a lot of really legitimate looking like domains that they managed to get. aws.amazon.app.inc. Like a lot of these at first glance like look pretty good. And a lot of these were also being used to stage attacks. So this is infrastructure that was owned and operated by these mercenary hacker groups that was shut down by the Google Threat Analytics Group.
That's my favorite one. Like, highlight this one when they like try to make it look like a different letter by putting an R and an N next to each other. I love when it's so creative.
iCloud. Yeah. So if you have the font real small and you're lean back. All right. So let's look at the Russian hack for hire groups. Log in my OAuth. Oh yeah. Mail.ru. OAuth login accounts. A lot of these are really sneaky. So this just goes to show how a lot of these domains that they use really at a glance look kind of legitimate, and you really need to look twice when considering like the kind of infrastructure these groups would use quite successfully for a large amount of attacks. So it's good to see that a lot of these were taken down, but it's also frightening to know that there really are services out there that the rich and powerful can engage in order to hack more vulnerable people, provided that they have the money.
Yep. Yeah. Phishing and like playing with links like this is like crazy effective. If you do have to do any like secure changes to your account, like make sure you enter from like a portal that you trust, like going to the app on your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't initiate stuff like that from a link on an email.
Gulg.
Yeah, because then you'll end up on Google, not Google.
All right, back over to you.
Okay. Speaking of less hackers for hire, but Russian hacktivists. They're now targeting Norway. I feel like it's like the new like neutral country. Like, why would you target Norway? But apparently there was some Russians on Svalbard, and Norway like denied sending supplies to them because the recent invasions. So a Russian criminal hacktivist organization took it upon themselves to start attacking Norwegian government sites. So they're like rendering like either internal sites for the Norwegian government useless by like DDoSing them constantly. So these, who knows whether or not they're connected to the Russian government or not, but anyone who has like any kind of if you're not being attacked by Russia directly, if you spite them, then their hackers will be sent after you.
Yeah, there's a lot of indications that there's kind of a structure where the Russian government has handlers that work with these black hat hackers who have rules, and they're allowed to operate and attack people in other countries basically with impunity, provided they also do things for the Russian government when they're told. And if they don't do this, they get arrested for all the crimes that have been documented against them, which other countries are aware of as well. So it's often that as soon as the Russian government decides someone is a strategic target, suddenly they have these groups that are criminal organizations that are not directly affiliated with the Russian government that then will start targeting them. So this is a pretty common thing that we see when a country speaks out against Russia or otherwise takes a move that angers the Russian government.
Yep. and they just get like, it's just a very like it's just like they're acting like a baby. It's just like a very spiteful mood, and they're like lashing out. Like it's not really like it's not going to change Norway's mind.
Some would call it asymmetric warfare, but yes, it is certainly a tantrum. All right, so over on my screen, we have an entrepreneurial sysadmin who was indicted for illegally generating VoIP licenses. This sounds like a very, very boring scheme. However, the amount of damage done here is actually pretty crazy. It's apparently $88 million worth of software licenses that were generated and sold through an unauthorized third party. So what happened here is that the system administrator went back and reactivated old employee accounts. By the way, it's kind of funny. I don't get to say this very often, but this is like literally exactly what like Varonis is for. Like, it's not every story that I'm just like, dang, they really should have had Varonis. But in this case, I'm just like, this probably would have benefited your company greatly. Okay, so I really hope they didn't already have it. If they did, it wasn't properly monitored. But yeah, so what looks like happened here is that the employee went back and reactivated the accounts of old employees that had been like rendered like dormant or inactive, and used them to generate a absolute ton of new license keys. So it made it look like the licensing was being divided amongst a bunch of people, but a lot of these were people who no longer worked there. So they weren't around to say, hey, who generated all these licenses on my behalf? So then, once these licenses were generated, they were sold to a third party who would resell them for a discount and undercut the company by a good amount of money in order to sell a bunch of licenses. So apparently these licenses were also pretty expensive because the amount of damage here is being valued again at $88 million. So if an insider can generate $88 million worth of damage at your business, then there are services out there that can detect large amounts of data, sensitive data being generated, exchanged, sold, transmitted, like all that stuff. And maybe you should look into it because that is a pretty wild insider story if I've ever heard one.
I mean, think about like all like the data that's being transmitted like within the company. It's like it's impossible to keep track of all of this.
Well, you think that,
yeah,
but it turns out
it's impossible for a human to.
Exactly. Yeah. And really, that's the point. Is like most of these businesses, they have so many different people that are connected to various permissions, and they have no way of monitoring them or detecting when somebody has access to really sensitive stuff that could, I don't know, enable like a black market. So in this case, the fact that the guy was accessing lots of other people's accounts, generating a lot of like sensitive information, and then exfiltrating it from the company are all pretty huge red flags that probably should have been caught. But hey, nobody's perfect at incident response, and in this case, the company now has a pretty big incentive to maybe make sure that that proprietary information, like license keys, isn't being sold out from under them at a huge volume and profit.
Well, yeah, and think about it, like this is already the second article today we've gone over where it's like it's not like an exploit in any code that was written. It was just a rogue employee, like in the OpenSea thing. It was just a rogue employee at a third party, which you can trust even less. So, like a lot of hacking ends up coming to like the human element because you can make things as encrypted as you want to, but one rogue employee just completely renders that useless.
It's gonna make you upset. The year that you went to the RSA conference, I'm pretty sure their marketing theme was the human element.
Oh.
And you just said it. They fed that to you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's been lingering in my brain until that.
Okay, all right. So let's go back over to yours.
Okay, here's one that we got to watch out for.
Right.
There is this software targeting YouTubers. Can you believe that?
The most
oppressed group.
Behind gamers, the most oppressed group.
YouTubers. So these guys are basically creating software installers for like common software that creators will have to use, such as Adobe Premiere, OBS Studio, and the installers, on top of installing like I'm sure is like a cracked version of the software, will install malware onto the device that will scrub through the browser's like metadata and find authorization tokens to access that YouTube account.
Huh.
So make sure you trust where you download your creator software from.
Yeah, so I guess they're looking for anybody who is on like coming up but not quite there yet.
But like OBS is free. Like just go to the OBS website and download it.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's free. So maybe retool over to like DaVinci Resolve and OBS
exactly.
for a while,
like,
and don't risk your entire credit you've built up with your YouTube community with having it taken over by a crypto scam.
Just Google like FOSS, free and open source creator software, and there's an equivalent for everything. Sometimes it's better. Like, you know, Photoshop I still think is the king. I never want to use GIMP, but DaVinci is pretty good.
Yeah.
And like Premiere is also good, but DaVinci's free. And like nothing is better than OBS for recording.
That's true.
And it's free and open source. It's great. But they keep. You've heard about companies keep like abusing OBS's license, right?
Oh yeah, to build on top of it slightly.
Yeah, it
and
happens
sell something.
all of the time. Like
Yeah.
TikTok's done it. All these huge companies just like steal OBS's software and then profit from it.
Open source.
Yep.
All right, over on my screen, we have a story of a bunch of people messing around and finding out. So this was a Ukrainian cybercrime group that was operating over 400 phishing sites that were mostly targeting fellow Ukrainians who were trying to get access to much needed aid. So as soon as the war kicked off, a bunch of very lame cyber criminals decided to start targeting their fellow citizens in order to try to scam them while they were applying for aid, trying to get out of the country, or otherwise accessing services that had been set up for the civilian population. It looks like they were able to steal about $3,300,000 from about 5,000 victimized citizens. And the raid on these guys is pretty crazy. They went ahead and climbed up a ladder in their backyard, as well as busting through their front door, and managed to do all of this while most of the suspects were just wearing shorts. So as you can see, they went in through the back, went in through the front.
It's a nice tactical ladder.
Yeah, it's got red stripes on it, so you know that it's for tactical use only. You know, went in through the front door, and what did they find? A bunch of shirtless nerds.
With computers.
With computers. If we skip forward past the partial nudity, we can see spreadsheets. Highly suspicious. And then, you know, generated debit cards. I'm seeing a little bit of anime over there. Like, all sorts of indicators of a very serious criminal operation. Oh, look at that. They've even got dollars. So these sorts of scams obviously are a huge burden on society when they target the people who are most vulnerable, but those people are often easy targets, and it doesn't take much for people who don't have any sort of qualms about going after these vulnerable people. It doesn't take them long to build business models around this. So these are the sorts of phishing pages that they were operating in order to lure people into thinking they were interacting with, you know, like real government services. And this guy's pretty mad about it, and is also very pleased that they've been caught, just to translate. That's it. That's all I got.
Wow.
All right, over to you.
Here I got another article that's an offshoot of the work from home revolution, is that people are using deepfakes to apply for remote tech jobs. And this not only has to do with like people like, you know, applying for multiple jobs or applying for jobs where, you know, they feel like they might not look like the part, but I've been also like reading articles about how North Koreans are trying to hack stuff by getting inside of these tech jobs. And they'll just like put up a profile of, you know, like a normal looking American dude, and then the interviewer gets there and it's just a completely unqualified dude with a heavy Korean accent, and they don't have their camera on.
Yeah.
So now instead they're going to use deepfakes.
Yeah. So this is something where we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and then like there was a job like posting response I saw for like a production thing we were doing, where we mentioned that it was like an ethical hacking thing, and we got a couple responses that were like really suspicious. They were like, is this job 100% remote? If so, I'm interested. And then like a resume that like had all the skills, but like in a very unaccountable way, like from like places that were like hard to track down or hard to contact or verify. And I was just like, is this are you a North Korean like, you know, researcher or something? So it's interesting to see that like now that I'm aware of this, I actually did get one resume where when I read it, I was like, okay, like we're actually looking for like production people to help us out with like a thing in Los Angeles, but like the fact that we had like programming and other stuff in it, those were keywords that generated a response that was just like, is this 100% remote? And plenty of people want, you know, remote jobs. I'm not saying that that's the red flag. The red flag was the resume that followed that I realized would be so hard to verify that it might as well be nothing, you know, even though it did say that they had all the skills that were necessary. So it was really weird to know that this is a real threat, and now that it's evolving to actually use deepfakes too.
Yeah, I mean, deepfakes are scary in a lot of ways, and this is just one of the ways it's manifesting.
So they were actually mimicking the voice and like video appearance of people, right? Were these real people or generated?
It's generated.
Okay,
but like,
sketchy.
Well, normally video spoofing is based off of someone's real voice. But there's so many hours. Like you could just like go to like some gamer's live stream and like pull hours and hours of them talking, and then there you go. You can just spoof their voice easily. And like, I don't think deepfaking video can like be done live yet, but I'm pretty sure audio is like almost there.
Yeah. So one of the things the FBI was also saying in this particular story was that if you wanted to look out for this, then you should look for video and audio that don't match up. So like just some things that are like not matching in the stream while they're talking, like the audio like desyncs occasionally, and unfortunately this can also happen just from normal lag. But if they like sneeze and like nothing changes, or like it goes like way later or something, then that audio not matching up has been one way that people who have been hit by this attack have been able to determine that it was in fact that attack. Yeah,
but they're applying like crypto companies like Oracle, which have their Oracle has their hands in everything, and they're just trying to get inside. There we go again, the human element.
The human element.
I guess it's much easier to get a job at one of these tech companies than it is to actually hack them.
Yeah, probably, yeah. That's funny. All right, so over on my screen, we have a story about Amazon fixing a pretty severe vulnerability in their Android Photos app. So Amazon allows you to host a bunch of photos online in like an online storage space, and their Photos application is how you do that. Unfortunately, it was pretty trivially easy to abuse some of these applications, and another app on your phone could be able to intercept tokens that would allow them to do all sorts of bad things. So after experimenting around with this, the researchers were able to find that it was possible to extract an authentication token and then actually delete all of the photos on your account, as well as transfer them elsewhere or do any number of other bad things. So if you had any sensitive photos in your Amazon account, or any photos that you need for work, or anything that you might not want to lose, it's possible they could do some sort of ransomware attack where they just literally transfer the photos elsewhere and then delete the ones irrevocably on your cloud account. So yeah, this has been fixed. So if you have this app, then you're going to want to make sure you get the most recent version. But up until now, it has been possible for another malicious app on your phone to basically execute a ransomware attack against your Amazon Photos app. So update if you can.
Yeah, I think I'm one of the few people who uses Amazon Photos, because my family does for some reason. It's actually like very good for like sharing photos.
It is.
Yeah, and it's like very cheap.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's how they get us. they draw you in on it's cheap and they raise the prices. But there's another reason not to use it.
All right, you got another one?
Oh, this one I'm especially interested in because I see these banks all the time where I'm from, but I've never seen someone use Bank of the West, but I think it's more of a bank for businesses and stuff like that. But they found credit card skimmers on their ATMs. And I still haven't seen one in the wild. I always check when I'm at a gas station or at an ATM for a skimmer, but I still haven't seen one. But Bank of the West has them.
I have taken like a gas station out of service, like a pump out of service, because I pulled so hard to make sure that it wasn't a skimmer that I just broke the actual thing. And I'm like, look, it was a skimmer. And they're like, no, that was
just the gas station.
And I was like, listen, I'm just doing my due diligence, performing an investigation. I'm a security researcher. This is what I do.
Yeah,
and
I do think it is becoming less popular with the chip becoming more popular and tap becoming more popular, which has more onboard encryption. Where like the magnetic strip, that was like I can't believe that was like the de facto method of paying for as long as it was. Yeah. Because that was so unsecure.
Yes, for real. And it can be copied so easily, and it's not an online thing. It's not encrypted.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. Hopefully new cars just don't even have those, because those are horrible. Especially if you're using a debit card, because then your pin's tied to it, and then they have access to your bank account.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Any other details on that?
No.
They just got skimmed, huh? Yeah.
Yep.
That sucks. It looks like, from what I read on that story, the scammers were able to issue themselves a bunch of new debit cards and used it to buy stuff online. So, like, sent the stuff to third parties who would then resell it and then like launder the money. So it was a way to, I guess, a bunch of like sketchy online stores to stock products by using stolen bank accounts to buy a bunch of stuff and then list it for sale on like a black market store and then keep the money. Sketchy.
Yep.
All right, so over on my screen, it is the first day after Pride Month, and already this story. So the LGBTQ community has been warned of extortionists abusing dating apps. So what this means is people going on these various apps that are meant for dating and stuff, and instead using a fake like phishing profiles in order to convince someone to send them explicit photos, and then blackmailing them that they're going to like put out those photos and ruin their lives.
It's like personal, like social ransomware.
Exactly. So there's a lot of people who might not be fully out to everybody around them, or that might have some photos of themselves that they are not finding very flattering. Of course, my advice is you just need to have excellent nudes. They need to be 100%. You could send them to your grandmother, and she would be
proud.
You look good, So if you're like, again, not a popular opinion, not a company line. This is my own personal view that like the FBI says, don't share personal info with people you just met on a dating app. Yes, valid. Always check who you're talking to. Yes, valid. Reverse image search. Yes. Don't pay scammers to destroy photos or conversations. Yes, that's great. But what's the other advice? Never send compromising images of yourself to anyone, no matter who they are or who they say they are. I'm sorry,
like
government.
Your significant other?
I'm sorry, government, but you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to choose to interpret this as never send a photo you wouldn't want to go public to anyone. So this is, there are photographers out there you can pay. I've been one, but I used to be a photographer. People paid me to do all sorts of stuff. And you know what? Like, it doesn't have to be like this. So if there's any photo out there of you that you've been sending around that, potentially you would really not like to see, hire a photographer, like get something nice that you're proud of. And this problem will never be a problem. But if you are, a deeply, in a very, very conservative area where that would never be allowed, I recommend that you take the picture riding on a horse. It's very masculine. Vladimir Putin basically did it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just saying there's ways of not being caught up in these sorts of scams where people are really targeted individually and their privacy is threatened and their safety is threatened. It's a very, very sketchy attack, and I would say, like, obviously keep yourself safe. Make sure that anybody who's just kind of directly going to try to get that sort of thing, you find out who they are first and verify their identity. But even then, they could be that person, but still blatantly willing to try to scam you. So just be careful. Make sure you're not sending anything out that you're not happy with, and consider the horse thing. A lot of people look very masculine on a horse.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is something that can really happen anywhere, but the stakes are much higher depending on the person you are if you are in the LGBTQ community.
Exactly. Exactly. If you're a senator and a photo comes out of you riding naked on a horse, like...
I mean, I think you're just, like, guaranteed re-election for life in that case.
It depends on the state. Yeah. Yeah, so... I
mean, that's how Putin did it, right? That's how Putin's still in power, right? It's that horse pic.
It was the horse picture, yeah. It really was. So, I mean, that's just my personal advice. Obviously, this is really sad to see, and cybercrime comes in many different forms. Cybercriminals are just, computer-connected criminals, and this is just another way that people can be victimized for getting on these apps and trying to meet other people, but instead getting in a situation where they're being blackmailed. So be careful out there.
Like, the thing that scares me about this one is, like, the barrier to entry is just being a bad person. Like, you don't need any knowledge about anything. You just, like, need to be willing to, like, hurt people.
Yeah, literally.
Like, that's what sucks about this. And there's not really much, these apps can really do.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's just
very... dealing with people. Be careful.
The day after Pride Month, you guys. Come on.
They get 1 month. That's it.
Yeah. All right, so I also have a story on Firefox adding a new privacy feature that by default will get rid of some of the tracking parameters that are added to URLs. So if you've ever had a friend share a URL with you and it's like 4 lines long, the odds are that it has a bunch of tracking junk on it, and it will still work even if you strip off all that tracking stuff. So there's a lot of different websites that will add this tracking junk. Amazon is particularly bad about it, but also Facebook and other websites that are, pretty interested in tracking who you're sharing links with or other sorts of things across the internet. So this can be automatically stripped out by Firefox if you enable a couple settings. Specifically, you need to go through and enable strict protection, which can break some websites. It's a little frustrating if that happens. And then go through and also enable the privacy query stripping enabled PB mode, option to true. So once you set these 2 things up, then it will automatically strip all of the tracking links out of URLs that you're trying to go to, which prevents tracking automatically and is really super cool, but again, may break certain websites. So For me, I think that it's worth it, and I try to strip these out all the time anyway, and having this feature built in is wonderful.
Yeah, very convenient. Yeah, I like what Mozilla's been doing, and they've been adding a lot of these security / anti like big tech features to the browser like baked in. So it's good for Mozilla. Choose Firefox.
Yeah, no, I've also been using Firefox Focus, both on my computer and then on my mobile device, and like it's a very privacy focused version of Firefox that is super stripped down, and it annoys me every day because it never remembers what I've searched before. It's very private and all that, but it does everything that I want in terms of privacy, and it's not too much of a compromise, so I still really like it. If you're looking for a cool browser.
Sometimes having your the suggestions stripped off because if you start typing a website with a T and then Twitter pops up, your brain's just going to go to that. But having focus, less likely to get distracted.
Yeah, someone says, don't get scammed by a Roomba. This actually
What?
happened to our production manager, Michael. Yeah, he fell in love with the Roomba, and he was actually being catfished. So if you wanna look up that episode of being catfished by a Roomba, our Hack 5 episode on how to catch catfish starred a Roomba as our perpetrator. But Michael didn't care. He loved it. The problem was that the Roomba dressed itself up as a much more expensive model, and then when they met, it was just a $35
run-of-the-mill Walmart Roomba.
It was actually off of Amazon. It was like a Wish.com style
There you
Roomba
go.
with googly eyes and hair. But Michael still loved it, so it was a sweet story at the end. All right, so that's all the time we have for this week. Nick, thank you so much for coming on and talking about some cybersecurity news. So people also ask, where's Alex? Alex is fine. So Alex is currently in Los Angeles, whereas we are up in the Treasure State, as we call it. So since Nick is here, I figured it would be good to have some more people on and just talk about Q&A stuff in the news. So when are you heading out?
I'm leaving sometime next week.
Okay, so maybe you'll be on next week's stream, maybe we won't, but
Yeah, we'll see.
if so, then you'll see Nick again next week, and if not, then thanks for coming on the stream.